There's Zoom.
Recording in progress.
All right, so welcome to the OCP Telco Edge discussion for April. I don't see Craig. Is there anything that we need to bring up from the OCP level?
Not that I know of, just the upcoming regional summit in Dublin is the main thing. There's a few other events happening, but those are the main ones currently.
Okay. All right. Well, so I think the plan for this month is to review and discuss this work that Lauren had so graciously started to capture some of the edge requirements that would kind of impact different environments that go beyond kind of the traditional data center and things that kind of are a foundation that we have in telco from sort of the NEBS perspective, but then really trying to codify this a little bit more depending on kind of these different areas. So without too much more to be said about that, why don't I'll kick it off to you, Lauren, if you want to kind of present to the group kind of the work you've been doing and kind of the goals behind the spreadsheet and kind of walk us through it, if that would be something you can tackle for us. Lauren, are you on mute? I can unmute him. Lauren, I think you're on mute.
No, I'm not on mute.
Oh, now we hear you. Okay, there you are.
Yeah, interesting. I thought I was unmuted, but I got muted somehow. Did you mute everybody? Anyway, I was gonna say
I'm sorry, Lauren. I did because you had some background noise.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting in the coffee shop.
I'm sorry about that.
That's fine. These things happen. So the goal here is to try and identify those different deployment environments and what their unique characteristics are, compared to the others, and come up with the list of kind of what the edge looks like in terms of where things get deployed and what the implications are for product design. So it's twofold here. One is across the top are the different names of environments that I've come across and that we talked about briefly last week. And then down the left-hand side is kind of the attributes that are of interest in terms of defining requirements for those environments. The reference is data center, and so the goal of the edge telco kind of group is everything but data centers, and to understand that criteria. And I'll just go across the top here of what we have come to at this point. So obviously the first one is data center as the reference, and then a follow-on enterprise headquarters or branch, and then 4 related to telco. And these come mostly directly from some of the NEBS requirements. So telco indoor, which is central office or remote central office, or mobile equipment in a very controlled environment. Telco outdoor cabinet, telco outdoor cabinet partially climate controlled, and then telco outdoor uncontrolled, which is basically products that are exposed to the full fury of nature. The other ones we got identified here are, and maybe this is 2 right now, factory, warehouse, hospital research, for lack of better things in terms of maybe some special requirements. Retail edge, for which I think we have some OCP collateral for that deployment side. This is rail or rail side. And then I listed marine, airplane, and satellite. And obviously I don't have anything written down for what these environments may require in terms of important attributes at this point.
Yeah, so it looks like, Lauren, this is updated since what you sent out to the mail list, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, and then okay, so yeah, you got the rail. All right, yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah, and I've kept the 2 together for now, but obviously we can talk about that more if we find some places we can dig up some criteria.
So I guess maybe the first thing to prove here is,
And we don't get those very often.
how do you all feel about this list? Do you think that we're missing anything?
And your ex-wife.
Do you think we have too much?
Well, I have heard of people sending equipment down like oil wells and stuff like that.
I
So
thought on Saturday they would do something like that. We haven't done one. I haven't. A place called the Pinnacles.
So yeah, what would that be, like confined areas or
yeah, I think the point though is it's not. So this is interesting criterion stuff in terms of OCP, right? Because OCP kind of intends that these are equipment that actually like create the internet or connected to the internet, right? So telco and edge implies that you use those things to connect into the internet and stuff.
yeah.
So I'm okay with leaving some of that out if there's, yeah, they send equipment down there, but I don't think they actually connect it to the internet. I think that's what the criteria looking across these categories are all these environments where things are connected to the internet.
Yeah, because I think like marine, that would cover like things with like high humidity and those types of things.
It could, for sure.
And then satellite could cover this, inaccessible or difficult accessibility.
Yeah, and certainly satellite has probably one of the extreme temperature environments, localized and stuff. Because like if you're not in the sun, it's way freezing, and if you're in the sun, it's really hot.
How about eating it? So we've been eating for a little while.
And then as we go down the left-hand side, obviously operating temperature is one of the key attributes here. And along with that comes this kind of cold start criteria. And if you go across here, you'll see that some environments, especially in the telco environment, they do specify things related to, okay, so yeah, you can operate at a certain temperature range, but can you actually cold start and boot? You know, if you've been turned off and you're at a minus 40 degrees C, you know, can you actually boot at that temperature? And I've had experience where that's true, where you can operate, but as soon as you cold start from a very low temperature, sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, I've got a buddy. He's been working on that. You know, Nokia launched that 5G equipment to the moon, and that has some pretty tough temperature requirements.
Yeah.
And I think where it ends up, the challenge is that it's in a crater and it's in shade, and like, you know, even I think the hardware that they have there can't function at the temperature that it's at.
I would believe that. Cool though. And then, so obviously, most data centers products are designed 0 to 40 degrees C. Sometimes they get derated, you know, below at a certain altitude, they get derated for temperature. This one's interesting, telco indoor. So they got these funny requirements of normal operation, extended temperature operation, and then, you know, kind of equipment you put into one of their racks and stuff. And so you look at this and, you know, normally this would mean that you have to actually design the product from -5 to 55 degrees C is kind of the takeaway from it. But they specify it weird, right? Because they're specifying it from the point of view of reliability. And even though they say -5 to 50 degrees C for, you know, 48 hours or whatever, we all know that when you design a product, 48 hours is no different than forever.
What
So
did the when you have the enterprise HQ branch and you have that in red, what is that signifying that we need to kind of vet those? Is that why you have those in red?
Yeah. So part of this is places where you can see a couple different sources, especially the second one there where it says ASHRAE. So ASHRAE is an organization that actually specifies some of these environments for commercial places and stuff. And there's a difference there. So they say 5 to 35 is kind of the operating range for basically enterprise or branch office and stuff. They're not going to the, you know, bigger extremes and stuff that's shown above there. So yeah, there's some needed discussion and more looking.
Lauren, did we lose you?
Some
there we
telco
go.
outdoor cabinets are side to side.
Hey, so for these temperatures, you know, would this be not invoking like any kind of CPU throttling? Would that be the idea? Is that, you know, on the higher end, you would not want the CPU to throttle, or would this allow, you know, throttling down to generate less heat at those temperatures?
That's a good question. I mean, I've heard people discuss it even in data centers. Even though the products designed for data center are 0 to 40 degrees C, the only one that they hold that strictly to is like switches. And other products like storage actually are designed maybe only to 35 degrees C ambient. And so there are those nuances there where there may be exceptions to the rule. And in fact, cloud data centers, they tend to turn off storage and maybe even servers and GPUs once they hit the 30 to 35 degree ambient range because of the amount of, you know, heat generated by those products or their sensitivity to heat.
Yeah, I think that GPU brings a big wild card into this.
Yeah, I know. You know, even at the company I work for, our target is 0 to 40 degrees C, even for those GPU things that, you know, max performance or max power draw and stuff like that. But it gets a little dicey. But I think those products that can't reach that range get noted as exceptions or clearly documented that they don't reach those range. But as a general rule, you know, these are kind of the temperature ranges that make sense.
I'm wondering if, you know, looking through your spreadsheet that you sent out, I'm wondering if there should be some kind of a, you know, noise level and decibel kind of thing that we should also have for some of these.
Yep, that was one that I didn't add, but aware of.
Okay.
I think last week we added these two, which were EM susceptibility,
Yeah, exactly.
EM emissions.
Yep.
Environmental is supposed to be shock and vibe, except for earthquake. What is it called? Sound or audio?
Noise. I don't know. When I go into our lab with these GPUs, my ears are ringing after I've sat there for 20 minutes.
Yeah, not supposed to be in there. But okay, yeah, we can add noise into this and see if there's a specification for this. I know.
Or maybe that's ambient noise generation.
Normally it's the product noise generation, right? So there are tests and specifications in terms of how you measure the noise generated by a product, and they put dB limits on that for some environments. Clearly, we understand if you're in you have products out in an office space, they don't want to be the same dB as products that are back in a closed room data center. So the other one's environmental, earthquake, power. So this is kind of the typical power sources that come into these places. Even the data center typically has both AC and some sort of a DC input, especially these days, right? Because a lot of the DC is we'll have to suspend. So even in data centers or cloud data centers, there's a lot of equipment that's 48 volts, right? Because that's what the OpenRack V3 is, and that's actually some devices like GPUs, take 48 volts DC directly to power the amount of power that's going into those things. Obviously, telco space is most of it's 48 volt, minus 48 volts DC as the power source for the equipment. So this was to try and capture it. There's two rows here because of a couple different interpretations of what that meant. And then the last two were kind of more yes, no, maybe kind of questions. So, do they require a BMC as the product management intelligence, and do they require a timing sync hardware?
Oh, like an external timing source?
This is the IEEE 1588 time sync stuff for the internet that gets you high PTP, precision timing protocol. So it used to be the only place that really required this in kind of the normal product world was equipment that's supporting cell site routers and part of the mobile network because they need precise timing for doing handovers and switchovers of packets and stuff. Data centers used to get by with just NTP, which is like network timing protocol, not very accurate per se, but it sets the time of day okay correctly enough. But some of these networks and stuff that are doing GPU backend stuff, they need some of their packet stamping stuff needs precision time to be able to manage congestion and reconstruct packets correctly that get delivered out of order and stuff. So even in data centers, there's emerging requirements for this time and sync capability of getting down to, across a whole network of, a few nanoseconds of time differentiation between nodes. So that's kind of the list at this point. Just open it up for discussion, or any ideas about how to go about filling this out a little bit better. Also wondering if there's a share website through OCP that we could use so that we could all edit this as we come across information. I would love to make this collaborative instead of me just consolidating or going through this stuff.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm wondering if we put this on the wiki, we just had to make sure that somebody just doesn't trash it. Yeah, I've been so I just dropped a couple links in the chat, just kind of looking for stuff around noise.
Hey, John, could
Yeah.
you follow up with Kevin Kiefer about what would be the
best way to do that?
Yeah. We should get something that's supported by the OCP IT group.
Yeah. Yeah, let me take that AI.
Yeah, once you find something like that, let me know. I'll continue working on this, in my time for another few days or however long it takes to get that link, that capability set up, and then I'll dump a copy in there for us all to edit.
Okay. So I'm going to follow up with Kevin to find a place to collaborate. All right. I'm wondering if it would be interesting to kind of highlight, we may not have the actual information, but like where we have suspicion of what is going to be critical for some of those environments. Oh, like maybe even have, is there a humidity? Do we need to have a humidity thing? Criteria?
The relative humidity here. That's row 5.
Okay. The information you have in here, these are known things coming from other sources.
From other sources, so the one source that's identified here is ASHRAE A3. Some of the other ones are coming from typical product designs from just looking at the industry, looking at Cisco, Celestica, EdgeCore, kind of what they do in these different environments for data center and telco stuff.
Okay.
Some of it's from the telco stuff's mostly from a summary of the NEBS level 3 compliance. You can see most of the stuff in NEBS is not red, right? So those I'm pretty solid about. The stuff in red is stuff that's kind of needs some more looking at from my perspective at this point.
Okay. But like, I'm wondering if they can like color code some of the cells that like,
Yeah,
that like these are the ones that we really should really find because they're the interesting ones, right? Like the marine one is probably humidity. The satellite's probably going to be temperature. Hospital is probably going to be noise and EM.
yeah, I can go through and take a tack at that.
What do the folks on the call think about this? Do you guys find this helpful? To kind of start a foundation for, kind of different requirements for different edge environments.
Kind of a good sanity check for whether you want to even approach this market or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing this for my own clarity too. So,
Lauren, I wonder too. What do you think about just like form factors, size, dimensions? Maybe not specifically numbers, but because kind of we saw that one use case last year where they wanted something that fit in a suitcase and they wanted to drag it to different environments and set it up. I'm think of where that would actually.
Yeah, let me think about that a bit. I think so. Most of these environments, a lot of it's 19-inch rackable, like even on airplanes and stuff. I think like outdoor stuff for telco can be kind of any shape it wants, and satellite stuff is probably pretty unique to begin with. There's probably not hardly any standards in terms of satellite stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of John Paul Smith had that use case. I'm trying to figure out like do we have a
but that
what you would
was that he wanted to take it and set it up, but that was more like a temporary thing, right? That wasn't like installed equipment that served as part of the edge internet connection. I forget a little bit about it.
It would kind of go to your like remote location problem that like it was going to and that's why you needed this, because it was like either a backup or like a replacement, and it was like the conditions he was describing was like, okay, they only had internet like later on in the day because it was like a shared internet connection with like the school, because they had very limited connectivity. So it was like very remote locations, and it needed, if you remember, he needed swappable CPUs and things because they'd be in regions that would maybe be encumbered by importing technology.
Yeah. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a general enough use case to me, quite frankly.
Yeah, it was very, very unique. It was very, very special.
Yeah. It sounds like a very, custom or very limited market for devices like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I could you could maybe almost say it's the retail case in some cases, because that's usually a pretty harsh, and I'm thinking more like I saw cases like at like Papa John's, where they like literally had this poor server that's like sitting in the kitchen that's just being, you know, covered in grease and hot and temperature wise, and it needed to be small because it, you know, they didn't have a lot of room. You know, and it was running, you know, a completely ancient, outdated version of the OS because nobody ever took care of it. It was, but, you know, it was running like the whole facility of like you know, taking you know, cash register input and then, you know, displaying screens to the kitchen staff and a bunch of stuff. So it was important, but it was just totally abused.
We could put a category abused environments.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one case you mentioned with kind of the remote outdoor stuff, I kind of put it in the telco space in terms of telco partially controlled, climate controlled, or uncontrolled environment.
Yeah, but it had like a very specific size to, like, his problem was like
Yeah.
sizing.
He needed to carry it on an airplane or something, right?
Yeah, like throw it in a
He wanted the suitcase version.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, if you know, not a large normal market, so you know, it's a few off, and nobody like, you know, most companies would actually take on a project like that as a, you know, standard product, I guess.
Yeah.
They would do it as a custom or, you know, custom project, but you know, it's not. It's a very customized kind of edge product, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you think about like some of these, you know, newer Raspberry Pis almost kind of could fit that.
Yeah.
They're getting pretty
Yeah. Yeah, you know, so one of the interesting things in all this is that we all have this internet edge device called our mobile phone that we're not even considering here, right? So this is everything that connects this kind of what we put down on paper here is everything that connects mobile phones to cloud data center. This is kind of what the scope of this is.
Yeah.
Although I must say that the requirements for the manufacturers put on mobile phones, maybe I'll go dig that up, right? That'd be an interesting comparison, right? Because that's kind of
that's the ultimate environment.
That's the ultimate edge environment. And even though OCP may not be in the process of specifying that, it'd be really interesting to understand what those product design requirements are for those mobile edge devices.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because those requirements there's such a volume there. And it's making that platform actually very economical.
Yeah,
right?
And I'm always amazed that when I drop my phone, it doesn't break. So
yeah,
how do they do that? Anyway,
so yeah, it may be good to actually have that as the, you know, that's the ultimate category, right?
I'm going to put that over on the right. We can kind of ensconce everything in the middle. So data center on the left, mobile devices on the right, and understand their environments and stuff.
You know, it is important as well because of the limited amount of processing that the handheld has versus the amount of processing that's available at these edge sites that we're talking about. You know, a lot of times you'll do something more computationally intense at the edge as we're talking about it in order to conserve on the requirements for the handheld device, which I don't know how you capture that kind of thing, but you know, there is a, you know, asymmetric types of processing that's done to minimize the load on the handsets.
Well, it's interesting, you know, that factory warehouse, you know, that in my mind could cover things like programmable logic controllers, PLCs, SCADA systems, you know, robotic type things.
Yeah. Well, I think all of the IoT devices are things that would probably connect to some of the things that you could talk about as an edge box.
Yeah, I think a lot of the factories and warehouses, they have
Yeah.
Wi-Fi connected scanners, right?
Yeah. I
Which
think
has a device.
at the end of the chain, there's a user equipment, and the edge supports these user equipments, whatever they may be, whether it's
Yeah,
a bar scanner, a camera, you know, hand phone, voice, a sound thing, all those kinds of things are these attachment endpoints. And in my mind, the edge is what attaches those endpoints. I don't consider the endpoint an edge.
right. Yeah.
That's more the
Should we-
aggregation
Device.
of several typical, endpoints. But yeah,
Should,
I'm with you.
should there be an IoT category then? It's a little bit smaller than a factory warehouse thing, but not quite a phone.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends. I mean, I'm thinking that if it's we should draw the line at it being the end device, right? So kind of like the electricians, right? They work up to that plug. Whatever you plug into has some requirements, but we're not necessarily designing the things that plug into that plug, only that the requirements are taken into account going from that point back.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows? Maybe we get into the appliance business.
OCP appliances, there you
Yeah.
go. Propose that to the board.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have done work on CPEs, right? I mean, AT&T did a couple, and then
Yeah,
like the Edge Core, I mean, the Celestica box for the campus broadband environment, or whatever.
yeah,
It's not broadband, but
the Edge, that was the retail Edge device.
yeah, but it was in that campus whatever.
Yeah, but that was like the classic Edge, right? It's like you got a device that that
Oh
connects
yeah,
various
right.
devices appropriately.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
it just
yeah.
had integrated Wi-Fi, integrated 5G, so you could
Right,
actually connect devices to that
right. So
Edge
it
retail
would
Edge
be that
device.
first device
Yeah,
before the end user device, right?
yeah,
That's right.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know. I mean, EdgeCore actually sold a lot of devices into warehouses where some of the Wi-Fi, some of the devices were Wi-Fi connected. The other ones were like cameras with you know PoE connections, right?
Yeah.
To cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
But those PoE switches tend to be that last edge device before you connect to
Right.
things.
The end device. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes you'd actually use a power or PoE port to connect to a Wi-Fi hub, right? So it was kind of a distributed thing on the edge. The Amazon thing was actually integrating it all together, right? So you could have plug-in cards that would do Wi-Fi without having to go to a Wi-Fi hub of any sort. You can just.
So is that kind of like a home gateway kind of a thing?
As home gateway was actually designed for retail. So you go to a shop and you install this device and you put the Wi-Fi and 5G stuff, and you can connect all your Wi-Fi devices in your store to this device, and then cross connect them out to 5G to get back to the home office.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very actually pretty cool specification. And I think we reference that here. It's like, where's this at? The retail edge. So yeah, retail edge. So we were going to go target RFI. There's a specification at OCP. We're going to go look at that to actually populate this row with what the specifications were for that edge device. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think we've got a little bit more of a framework here.
Does anybody have any more thoughts, any input they're wanting to share?
Well, this is totally different from the RF Edge classification. I mean, from a hardware perspective, it makes sense. Just wondered, should it be kind of consolidated in a way that some of them might have, if they're very close, could be consolidated in a smaller number of categories?
Possibility, I'd say that's a second step that we could consider once we understand kind of this division of deployment environments. I'm all for, like, yeah, if some are close, let's see if we can condense them down to fewer set. I don't know enough about all these environments to be able to do that at this point myself.
Yeah, there may not be, this may be something we have to kind of create or start to maybe come up with. But yeah, definitely, I think it's an interesting.
Well, I think the thing is I don't think we're not proposing to work on each of these categories necessarily, but then just to have the taxonomy.
Yeah.
I don't think this is like a scope item or a statement of work at this point. It's just to be able to articulate what we are talking about when we're talking about edge devices.
Yeah.
In OCP.
So you're talking about the horizontal top row, and then the criteria on the far left column there. Well, this is a great start, Lauren. So appreciate the work here.
Absolutely.
And,
you're welcome, guys.
Absolutely.
Pretty interesting. It helps me because I know, even AT&T is coming back and going to be talking about some new OCP stuff, and this, especially these four here. I know that AT&T's done stuff that fits into this telco indoor environment. They've done stuff for telco outdoor cabinet, maybe both of these. I don't think we've got any OCP stuff that's really telco outdoor as the specification. But
would that be like pole mounted stuff would be the telco outdoor?
Yeah. Yeah. You get a lot of, I've heard a lot of stories about this environment being in India, where they take equipment that was designed for this and they put it in that environment.
Well, it's been interesting because they're wiring my neighborhood here for fiber, and so at the end of my block is the outdoor cabinet. So
yeah, the outdoor cabinet.
Driving through there and actually seeing how all of that, it's kind of in there.
Yeah,
and then,
pretty interesting.
They were actually putting in more fans and cooling, and so that's why that noise thing was kind of relevant to me, because this thing actually does have a noise, and like the house next to it would be kind of annoying to have to live next to it.
Yeah. And, AT&T did have a fiber panel that they submitted to the OCP because they wanted to have standardization where vendors have these plugins and they're all slightly different. And so AT&T made a spec so that they could have one size form factor, and they could buy it from multiple vendors because they couldn't get anybody to, no one agreed. Everybody's was different, kind of lock you into their connector.
Yep. Well, that's definitely an OCP value, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in the old days that would have been a Belcore thing and pricing process.
All right.
Well, I don't have anything else. Does anybody have anything else they want to share or talk about this month? Going once?
I need to go home.
Twice? All right. Well, I guess that'll be a wrap then for April. And again, thank you so much, Lauren. This is a really good start. And I will take that action item to get with Kevin to figure out what's the best way to kind of get this in some kind of way we can collaborate without it being a target for.
Destruction. Yeah, I gotta trust the community.
Yep.
Just make sure they have a valid login before they
Yeah, exactly.
hack the file.
Yeah, we get traceability. Yep.
All right, thank you
All
all
right,
for
everyone.
joining. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and we'll talk to you again next month.
Okay, we'll see you.
All right. Bye-bye.